What if the engines of the future don't look like engines at all? No roaring pistons, no spinning turbines, no clattering gears, just pure, silent motion, as if by magic. This isn't a scene from a distant sci-fi fantasy. It's happening right now in labs and workshops around the world, where engineers are rewriting the rules of propulsion. Think about the last time you heard an airplane overhead or felt the rumble of a passing truck. Sound is so ingrained in our idea of motion that it's hard to picture an engine that doesn't make a peep. Yet that's exactly what's emerging: propulsion systems with no moving parts, harnessing invisible forces to push boundaries we once thought were unbreakable. The secret lies in bending physics to our will, using electromagnetic fields to propel objects without touch, ion thrusters that whisper through the vacuum of space, and acoustic waves that manipulate air itself. These aren't incremental upgrades, they're leaps into uncharted territory. Picture a drone hovering silently overhead, its lift generated not by spinning blades but by an unseen force. Envision spacecraft gliding between planets, driven by streams of ions so faint they're barely detectable. This is the promise of silent propulsion, technology that doesn't just improve performance but redefines what's possible. And the implications are staggering, from reducing noise pollution in our cities to enabling missions to the farthest reaches of the solar system. But how does it actually work? What kind of engineering genius does it take to build an engine that doesn't rely on the very mechanics we've depended on for centuries? That's the story we're about to unravel. Over the next few minutes, we'll dive into the hidden principles behind these silent marvels, meeting the minds who are turning theory into reality. We'll explore the challenges they face, like how to generate enough thrust without traditional moving parts, or how to harness energy efficiently in ways that seem almost counterintuitive. And we'll glimpse the future they're building, where the hum of an engine could become a relic of the past. So buckle up, or rather, don't, because this ride is smoother and quieter than anything you've ever experienced. The age of silent propulsion is here, and it's about to change everything. Think about the steam engines that powered the Industrial Revolution, massive, clanking behemoths that transformed society but demanded constant maintenance, belched smoke, and shook the ground beneath them. Fast forward to the 20th century, and internal combustion engines took over, refining the process but still shackled by pistons, crankshafts, and the inevitable wear and tear of metal grinding against metal. Even jet turbines, for all their power, are fundamentally just high-speed fans pushing air with brute force. For centuries, propulsion meant noise, vibration, and inefficiency, trade-offs we accepted as the price of motion. But what if we could untangle movement from machinery altogether? That's the breakthrough happening right now. Engineers are tapping into the fundamental forces of nature, electromagnetism, ion dynamics, even sound waves, to generate thrust without a single gear or lever. Imagine a ship gliding through the ocean with no propeller, its hull coated in panels that ripple the water silently with precise acoustic pulses, or a pacemaker so delicate it's powered not by a battery with moving electrons, but by the subtle push of magnetic fields. These aren't just incremental improvements, they're reinventions of how we think about propulsion, and the key lies in sidestepping friction entirely. Traditional engines waste energy fighting against themselves, metal parts heating up, lubricants breaking down, vibrations sapping efficiency. But when motion comes from an invisible field or a stream of charged particles, there's nothing to wear out, nothing to overheat. The implications are staggering. Take underwater exploration. Today's robotic submersibles are limited by the noise their thrusters make, scaring away marine life or muddying scientific readings. Silent propulsion could let them hover next to a coral reef or a shipwreck without disturbing a single grain of sand. In hospitals, imagine nanoscale devices traveling through the bloodstream, steered not by clunky motors but by external magnetic fields. No risk of mechanical failure, no invasive surgery to replace a worn-out part. Even space travel stands to benefit. Ion thrusters, already used in some satellites, could take spacecraft farther and faster on whisper-thin beams of charged atoms, unburdened by the weight of fuel tanks or combustion chambers. This shift isn't just about making things quieter, it's about making them better. Without the constraints of moving parts, engineers can design propulsion systems that last longer, use energy more efficiently, and operate in environments where traditional engines would fail. It's a reminder that sometimes the biggest leaps forward come not from improving what we already have, but from reimagining it entirely. The age of silent propulsion isn't just changing how things move, it's changing what movement means. To understand silent propulsion, we have to let go of everything we know about traditional engines. Picture a car engine, pistons pumping, valves opening and closing, metal parts constantly in motion. Now erase all of that. What's left? The answer lies in forces we can't even see. Take electrohydrodynamics, where high-voltage electric fields silently push charged particles in a fluid, creating thrust without a single moving component. It's like using an invisible hand to stir the air or water around an object, propelling it forward without noise or vibration. Then there's photophoresis, where carefully aimed beams of light exert just enough pressure to nudge tiny objects. Imagine a spacecraft sailing through the void, propelled not by fiery rockets but by the gentle push of photons. What makes these systems revolutionary isn't just their silence, it's their simplicity. Without gears, bearings, or combustion chambers, there's almost nothing to wear out. A traditional jet engine has thousands of parts, each a potential point of failure, but a silent propulsion system might have just a few critical components: electrodes, magnetic coils, or precisely tuned lasers. That reliability opens up possibilities we've never considered before. Think of medical implants that could last decades without maintenance, or satellites that maneuver for years without fuel. Even here on Earth, silent propulsion could transform everyday technology. Imagine air conditioning systems that circulate air not with noisy fans but with carefully directed electric fields, or industrial robots that glide through factories without the hum of servos. The magic happens at the intersection of physics and engineering. Take ion thrusters, already used in some spacecraft. They work by stripping electrons off atoms, creating positively charged ions that shoot out at incredible speeds when exposed to an electric field. The thrust is tiny, about the weight of a sheet of paper, but in the frictionless vacuum of space, that gentle push adds up over time, allowing probes to reach speeds no chemical rocket could sustain. Now researchers are scaling this principle for use in Earth's atmosphere, experimenting with ionized air streams that could one day lift drones or even small aircraft without a single spinning blade. But perhaps the most surprising frontier is acoustics. Engineers are now designing propulsion systems that use carefully timed sound waves to manipulate air or water. These aren't the chaotic vibrations of a loudspeaker, they're precisely controlled pulses that create pressure differences, pushing objects with no physical contact. It's like surfing on a wave of air where the energy comes not from brute force but from perfect timing. Already, labs have demonstrated tiny levitating objects held aloft by nothing but sound, hinting at a future where entire vehicles might ride on acoustic waves. What ties all these approaches together is a shift from mechanical brute force to elegant control. Instead of battling friction and inertia, silent propulsion systems work with the fundamental forces of nature, coaxing motion from fields and particles. The result isn't just quieter machines, it's a whole new paradigm for how things move. And as these technologies mature, they promise to reshape industries, redefine reliability, and unlock possibilities we're only beginning to imagine. The age of clattering, roaring engines may soon give way to a world where propulsion is as silent and effortless as a breath of wind. Electromagnetic fields might sound like something out of a futuristic novel, but they're already quietly revolutionizing how we think about motion. At its core, this technology relies on a simple yet profound principle. Charged particles respond to magnetic and electric fields, allowing engineers to push them, and by extension, entire vehicles, without a single moving part. Picture a spacecraft drifting through the void, its thrust generated not by explosive chemical reactions, but by the silent acceleration of ionized gas. Or imagine a drone lifting off without the telltale buzz of rotors, propelled instead by an invisible lattice of magnetic forces. This isn't just theoretical. Prototypes are already taking flight, proving that propulsion doesn't need noise to be powerful. The magic happens when air or another gas is ionized, stripping electrons from atoms to create a cloud of charged particles. These ions become putty in the hands of carefully arranged electromagnetic fields, which can accelerate them to staggering speeds. In the vacuum of space where there's no air resistance, even a faint stream of ions can build up enough momentum to push a spacecraft forward over time. It's like blowing on a sailboat, except the wind is a beam of charged particles, and the sail is the spacecraft itself. The efficiency here is unmatched. Ion thrusters can operate for years on just a few kilograms of fuel, making them ideal for deep space missions where every gram counts. But bringing this technology down to Earth presents a fascinating set of challenges. In our atmosphere, air resistance and the energy required to ionize gases at scale can drain efficiency. Researchers are tackling this by experimenting with hybrid systems, combining electromagnetic propulsion with minimal traditional components to bridge the gap. One promising approach involves using superconducting materials to generate ultra-strong magnetic fields with minimal energy loss, potentially making silent urban air taxis a reality. Imagine a city where delivery drones glide overhead without a sound, their movement guided by magnetic grids embedded in rooftops or streetlights. The implications stretch far beyond transportation. In manufacturing, electromagnetic propulsion could enable ultra-precise positioning of components without physical contact, eliminating friction and wear in assembly lines. Medical applications might include tiny devices guided through the body by external magnetic fields, performing surgeries without invasive incisions. Even renewable energy could benefit wind turbines without gears, relying instead on magnetic levitation to spin silently and efficiently. What makes electromagnetic propulsion so exciting isn't just the absence of noise, it's the sheer versatility. Unlike traditional engines, which are bound by the limits of mechanical design, these systems can be scaled up or down with relative ease. A satellite might use a palm-sized ion thruster, while a future passenger aircraft could harness an array of electromagnetic coils spanning its wings. The common thread: motion without friction, without wear, and without the roar we've come to expect from machines. As researchers crack the code on energy efficiency and scaling, we're inching closer to a world where propulsion isn't just silent, it's practically invisible. And that changes everything. Ion thrusters are the quiet pioneers of space travel, proving that propulsion doesn't need brute force to be groundbreaking. Unlike traditional rocket engines that roar to life with fiery exhaust, these systems work almost like a gentle whisper in the void. They're secret, xenon gas ionized, accelerated by electric fields, and ejected at speeds up to 90,000 miles per hour. The thrust is so faint you wouldn't feel it in your palm, but in the frictionless environment of space, that steady push adds up over months or even years, allowing spacecraft to reach velocities chemical rockets could never sustain. It's the tortoise and hare principle on a cosmic scale. Slow and steady wins the race across the solar system. What makes ion thrusters so revolutionary isn't just their silence, it's their endurance. A typical satellite might carry tanks of xenon no larger than a few soda cans, yet that's enough fuel to maneuver for a decade or more. Compare that to conventional thrusters, which guzzle propellant in short, wasteful bursts. Missions like NASA's Dawn spacecraft, which explored the asteroids Vesta and Ceres, relied entirely on ion propulsion, gliding between orbits with the precision of a painter's brushstroke. And the European Space Agency's Bepi Colombo mission is using similar technology to navigate the harsh gravitational pull of Mercury, proving these systems can operate even close to the Sun. But here's the catch: ion thrusters thrive in space precisely because there's no air resistance. Earth's thick atmosphere would swallow their delicate ion beams whole, making them useless for drones or airplanes, at least for now. Researchers are already tinkering with workarounds, like pairing ion thrusters with lightweight solar arrays to create silent drones for surveillance or environmental monitoring. Picture a fleet of gliders hovering over wildfire zones, their ion drives adjusting airflow without a single rotating blade to spark flames. Or imagine underwater versions where ionized water molecules replace xenon, enabling submarines to navigate with unparalleled stealth. The next frontier, scaling up. Current ion thrusters excel at nudging small satellites, but for crewed missions to Mars or beyond, we'd need systems with far greater thrust. Breakthroughs like NASA's Next Sea engine, with 3 times the power of its predecessors, hint at what's possible. Private companies are even testing grids of tiny ion thrusters working in unison, like a swarm of ants lifting a log. It's a reminder that sometimes the future isn't about building bigger engines. It's about rethinking how motion works altogether. And as these technologies evolve, they're quietly rewriting the rules of exploration, one ion at a time. Sound waves might seem like an unlikely candidate for propulsion, but they're quietly proving to be one of the most versatile tools in the silent movement revolution. Picture a tiny bead suspended in midair, not by strings or magnets, but by an invisible grid of high-frequency sound waves pressing against it from all sides. This is acoustic levitation, a phenomenon where carefully tuned sound waves create zones of high and low pressure so precise they can counteract gravity itself. It's like balancing a beach ball on a jet of air, except the jet is made of pure sound, and the control is so exact it can manipulate objects smaller than a grain of sand. The science behind this is as elegant as it is counterintuitive. When sound waves overlap just right, they form what's called a standing wave, a pattern where certain points in space experience intense pressure while others remain nearly silent. By positioning an object at one of these high-pressure nodes, engineers can essentially trap it in midair, free from any physical contact. Early experiments used simple ultrasonic speakers to levitate droplets of liquid or lightweight polystyrene balls, but today's researchers are pushing the boundaries further. Imagine factory assembly lines where microchips float through the air, guided by sound waves to avoid the microscopic scratches that even the gentlest robotic arms might cause. Or think of pharmacies where pills are coated in delicate medications without ever touching a surface, ensuring perfect purity. medical applications are where acoustic levitation could truly shine. Traditional surgical tools, no matter how sterilized, carry a risk of introducing contaminants or damaging sensitive tissues. But a scalpel guided by sound waves could operate without ever physically touching the body, reducing infection risks and improving precision. Researchers are even exploring how to use focused sound waves to deliver drugs directly to specific organs, like targeting a tumor with chemotherapy while sparing healthy tissue. It's like having a surgeon's hands that can pass right through skin and bone without leaving a trace. The challenge: scaling up. Right now, acoustic levitation works best for tiny objects. Think millimeters, not meters. Lifting something as large as a drone or a car would require an impractical amount of energy and speaker arrays the size of buildings. But engineers are tackling this by combining acoustic techniques with other silent propulsion methods, like magnetic fields, to share the workload. Another hurdle is efficiency. Sound waves dissipate quickly in open air, so keeping an object aloft requires constant energy input. Yet even here, breakthroughs are emerging, like using reflective surfaces to bounce sound waves back into the system, effectively recycling the energy. What makes acoustic propulsion so fascinating isn't just its silence, it's its gentleness. Unlike electromagnetic methods that require conductive materials or ion thrusters that need specific gases, sound waves can manipulate almost anything from water droplets to living cells. This opens doors in fields like material science, where researchers can study molten metals without contaminating them in a crucible, or in space exploration, where sound could handle fragile samples in zero gravity without the risk of static cling or magnetic interference. We're still in the early days of harnessing sound as a propulsive force, but the possibilities are as vast as they are unexpected. From factories where products assemble themselves in midair to operating rooms where the tools never make contact, acoustic levitation is rewriting the rules of how we interact with the physical world. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful technologies aren't the loudest, they're the ones you can't hear at all. Light has no mass, yet it carries enough momentum to push objects, a paradox that might just unlock the future of space travel. This phenomenon, called photophoresis, occurs when light particles strike a surface, transferring their tiny but measurable momentum. At microscopic scales, this force can propel particles suspended in air or space, nudging them forward with nothing but photons. Now, scientists are asking, could we harness this effect to send spacecraft sailing between the stars, powered by sunlight alone? The idea isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. Imagine a probe no heavier than a postage stamp, its surface coated in an ultra-thin, reflective material. When struck by a laser beam from Earth, the photons would push it forward, accelerating it to a fraction of light speed over time. No fuel, no engines, just pure light acting as an invisible engine. The Breakthrough Starshot initiative, backed by luminaries like Stephen Hawking, aims to do exactly this. Their vision involves launching swarms of nanocraft toward Alpha Centauri, propelled by ground-based lasers firing at their lightweight sails. Each probe would weigh grams at most, with sails thinner than a human hair. The lasers, focused for years, would gradually accelerate them to 20% the speed of light, fast enough to reach our nearest stellar neighbor in just 20 years. Compare that to traditional rockets, which would take tens of thousands of years for the same journey. The math checks out. In the vacuum of space, even the faintest push adds up when there's no friction to slow things down. But photophoresis isn't just for distant stars. Closer to home, researchers are testing light-powered propulsion for maneuvering tiny satellites in Earth's orbit. Traditional thrusters are impractical for spacecraft this small. They'd take up too much mass or risk contaminating delicate instruments. Light sails offer a silent, clean alternative. A recent experiment by Japan's Ikaro's mission proved the concept works, successfully navigating space using only sunlight pressure. Though the acceleration was minuscule, it demonstrated that photophoresis isn't just theory, it's viable physics. Scaling this technology for human-scale travel, however, is a colossal challenge. The thrust generated by light is proportional to the surface area it hits, so pushing anything heavier than a few grams would require impossibly large sails or lasers with planet-sized power grids. Even the breakthrough Starshot concept relies on probes so lightweight they'd carry no onboard instruments beyond a basic camera and transmitter. Yet the promise is too compelling to ignore. Unlike ion thrusters or chemical rockets, light propulsion requires no fuel reserves, meaning probes could theoretically travel indefinitely. A photophoretic craft could coast between stars for centuries, its trajectory adjusted by distant lasers or the gentle pressure of starlight itself. The implications stretch beyond propulsion. Light sails could revolutionize how we explore hazardous environments, like the scorching vicinity of the Sun or the icy plumes of Saturn's moons. A fleet of disposable, laser-driven probes could map asteroid fields or monitor solar storms without risking expensive hardware. And if we ever master the ability to focus lasers over interstellar distances, photophoresis might become humanity's bridge to the galaxy, one photon push at a time. What makes this approach so captivating isn't just its elegance, but its defiance of conventional limits. Rockets are bound by the tyranny of fuel. Every gram of propellant requires more fuel just to lift itself. Light propulsion breaks that cycle, turning the universe's most abundant resource, light itself, into an engine. It's a reminder that sometimes the most revolutionary ideas aren't about building bigger machines, but about reimagining the very forces we take for granted. The day we launch a spacecraft without fuel might not be as far off as we think, and when it happens, it'll be the quietest leap forward in history. No roar of engines, just the silent whisper of light against sail. Electrohydrodynamic thrust sounds like something ripped from the pages of a retro-futuristic comic. Planes gliding through the air with no propellers, no jet engines, just an invisible force pushing them forward. Yet this isn't science fiction. It's a phenomenon rooted in century-old physics, now being harnessed in ways that could redefine flight. At its core, electrohydrodynamics works by turning air itself into an engine. When a high-voltage current passes between two electrodes, it rips electrons off nearby air molecules, creating a cascade of charged particles. These ions collide with neutral air molecules, dragging them along in what's poetically called ionic wind, a silent, steady breeze generated entirely by electricity. The first working models of this technology were humble, tiny, lightweight devices barely thicker than a coin, hovering for minutes at a time in lab conditions. But what they lacked in power, they made up for in elegance. Unlike drones with buzzing rotors or jets with roaring turbines, these prototypes flew with an almost eerie quietness, their only sound the faint crackle of ionizing air. Researchers quickly saw the potential. Propulsion without moving parts means no wear and tear, no lubrication, no complex gearboxes. Just a simple, solid-state system that could theoretically last for decades with minimal maintenance. Scaling this effect to carry meaningful payloads, however, is where the real challenge lies. Ionic wind produces relatively weak thrust compared to traditional propulsion. Think of blowing through a straw versus an industrial fan. Early calculations suggested that lifting a human would require an impractically large array of electrodes and power sources, but materials science is flipping the script. Recent breakthroughs in graphene and other ultra-light, conductive materials are allowing engineers to pack more electrode surface area into smaller spaces, dramatically increasing thrust without adding weight. Meanwhile, advances in high-voltage electronics are making the power systems more efficient, reducing the energy waste that once made EHD flight seem impractical. Imagine the possibilities if this technology matures. Urban air taxis could flit between rooftops without disturbing the city below, their passage marked only by a faint blue glow from ionizing electrodes. Emergency medical drones might deliver supplies to disaster zones, navigating tight spaces where rotor wash would cause chaos. Even commercial aviation could transform. Picture a passenger plane with no external engines, its thrust generated by sleek, integrated panels along the fuselage, reducing drag and noise pollution to near zero. The hurdles aren't trivial. Energy density remains a critical bottleneck. Current batteries can't yet provide enough sustained power for long-distance EHD flight without becoming prohibitively heavy. And regulatory frameworks will need to adapt to entirely new safety considerations, like managing high-voltage systems in shared airspace. But the pace of progress is accelerating. Private companies and academic labs are already testing hybrid models drones that use ionic wind for silent hovering and traditional rotors for bursts of speed, blending the best of both worlds. What makes electrohydrodynamics so compelling isn't just the technology itself, but the philosophy behind it. For over a century, flight has meant forcing air to move, whether with propellers, wings, or turbines. EHD flips that logic. Instead of pushing air, it persuades air to push back, using the subtle interplay of physics to create motion. It's a reminder that sometimes the most revolutionary advances come not from overpowering nature, but from understanding it deeply enough to work in harmony. And if that harmony happens to be whisper quiet, even better. Heat might seem like an unlikely candidate for silent propulsion after all. We associate it with roaring furnaces and sizzling engines. But hidden within those temperature differences lies a remarkable secret: the ability to create motion without a single moving part. It all comes down to thermoacoustics, a field where heat doesn't just dissipate, it sinks. Picture a sealed tube filled with gas, one end heated and the other cooled. As the temperature gradient shifts, the gas begins to oscillate, generating powerful sound waves that ricochet through the chamber. These aren't just random vibrations, they're orchestrated pulses of energy, harnessed to create thrust as precise as it is silent. The genius of thermoacoustic engines lies in their simplicity. Unlike traditional heat engines with pistons, valves, and crankshafts, these systems have no mechanical parts to wear down or malfunction, just a carefully designed resonator and a temperature difference. NASA has already tested prototypes for space missions where reliability is non-negotiable. Imagine a deep space probe powered by sunlight, its thermoacoustic engine humming along for decades without maintenance, converting solar heat into a steady push toward the outer planets. Or consider remote weather stations in the Arctic, where conventional generators would freeze solid. But thermoacoustic devices could run indefinitely on the very temperature extremes that would cripple other machines. But the applications don't stop there. Researchers are now scaling this principle for use in solar-powered drones, where lightweight thermoacoustic thrusters could replace noisy propellers. These drones could hover silently over disaster zones, relaying critical information without disturbing rescue efforts, or monitor wildlife for days on end without scaring animals with engine noise. Even industrial settings are taking note. Factories could use waste heat from machinery to power silent air circulation systems, turning inefficiency into propulsion. The challenge: efficiency. While thermoacoustic engines excel in durability, they've historically struggled to match the power output of traditional systems. But breakthroughs in materials like high-temperature superconductors and advanced heat exchangers are closing the gap. One team at MIT recently demonstrated a thermoacoustic Stirling engine that rivals the efficiency of small internal combustion engines, all while producing zero emissions. Another group in Japan is experimenting with cascading systems, where multiple thermoacoustic stages amplify each other, like a chorus of heat-driven voices building to a crescendo of thrust. What makes this approach so compelling isn't just the absence of noise or moving parts, it's the way it turns waste into opportunity. Every power plant, server farm, or even kitchen stove leaks heat into the environment as a byproduct. Thermoacoustic engines could harvest that lost energy, transforming background warmth into useful motion. Picture a future where the heat radiating from your car's exhaust pipe helps power its cooling fans, or where rooftop panels silently convert sunlight into both electricity and airflow for ventilation. It's a vision of propulsion that doesn't just avoid waste, it thrives on it. The implications for sustainability are profound. In off-grid communities, thermoacoustic generators could provide reliable power without fuel shipments or complex machinery, running on everything from cooking fires to geothermal vents. Space colonies might rely on them to harness the temperature swings between sunlight and shadow, turning the harsh extremes of other worlds into an asset. Even everyday appliances could benefit: refrigerators that circulate coolant without compressors, or laptops that use their own heat to silently cool their processors. This is the quiet revolution of thermal propulsion, motion born not from combustion or friction, but from the gentle dance of molecules in a temperature gradient. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful forces are the ones we barely notice until they're harnessed in ways that change everything. And as these technologies mature, they promise to redefine not just how things move, but how we think about energy itself. Quantum propulsion isn't just about building better engines, it's about rewriting the rules of physics itself. At the subatomic scale, particles flicker in and out of existence, dancing in a vacuum that's far from empty. This quantum foam, as physicists call it, is teeming with fleeting energy, and some researchers believe it could hold the key to propulsion unlike anything we've seen. Take the Casimir effect. Place two ultra-thin metal plates incredibly close together in a vacuum, and they'll inexplicably pull toward each other. Why? Because the space between them becomes too narrow for certain quantum fluctuations to exist, creating an imbalance of pressure that nudges the plates together. It's as if the universe itself is pushing back, and if we could reverse or redirect that push, we might unlock thrust from nothing but the fabric of reality. The implications are dizzying. Imagine a spacecraft equipped with panels that manipulate these quantum forces, surfing the seething energy of empty space without fuel or exhaust. Instead of carrying propellant, it would ride subtle imbalances in the quantum vacuum, like a sailboat catching gusts of wind too faint to feel. NASA Eagleworks Lab has dabbled in these ideas, testing controversial concepts like the M-Drive, a device that appeared to generate thrust without expelling mass, though results remain hotly debated. Even if the M-Drive itself doesn't pan out, the thinking it inspired is revolutionary. What if propulsion doesn't require pushing against anything at all? Then there's quantum vacuum propulsion, which takes this idea even further. Theoretically, if you could distort the quantum vacuum asymmetrically, say, by creating an energy gradient around a spacecraft, you might produce net thrust. It's akin to rolling a ball downhill, except the hill is woven from the underlying structure of spacetime. Some models suggest this could enable acceleration without violating conservation of momentum, though the math is thorny and the energy requirements daunting. For now, it's the realm of whiteboards and supercomputers, but so were ion thrusters and light sails just decades ago. What makes these concepts so tantalizing is their sheer audacity. Traditional propulsion fights against inertia. Quantum propulsion sidesteps it entirely. A ship powered this way wouldn't just be silent. It would barely interact with the universe as we know it, gliding through space like a ghost. Distances that currently take generations to cross might shrink to manageable jumps, not because we're moving faster, but because we're redefining what movement means. Picture a probe arriving at Alpha Centauri, not by brute forcing its way there, but by subtly tweaking the quantum fields around it, inch by inch. Of course, the hurdles are cosmic. Harnessing quantum effects requires precision we're only beginning to fathom, and scaling them to practical levels demands materials and energy sources that don't yet exist. Skeptics rightly point out that many of these ideas flirt with the boundaries of known physics, and some might prove impossible outside of theory. But that's how breakthroughs happen, by probing the edges of the impossible until they give way. The first steam engines were laughably inefficient. The Wright brothers' plane flew barely 100 feet. Quantum propulsion today might seem like a pipe dream, but so did silent flight and ion thrusters once. What's clear is this: the next frontier of propulsion won't be about building bigger rockets or refining old designs. It'll emerge from the strange, shimmering world of quantum mechanics, where particles blink in and out of existence and empty space thrums with hidden energy. Whether it's the Casimir effect, vacuum fluctuations, or some yet undiscovered phenomenon, one thing's certain: the future of motion won't roar. It'll hum, almost imperceptibly, at the very edge of hearing. And when it arrives, it won't just change how we move through space. It'll change how we understand the universe itself. Silent propulsion has a paradox at its core. The quieter the technology, the harder it is to deliver raw power. Think of it like comparing a feather's touch to a sledgehammer's blow. Ion thrusters, for instance, can run for years on mere kilograms of fuel, making them perfect for the slow, steady journey of deep space probes. But that same efficiency comes at a cost. Their thrust is so gentle it would take weeks just to push a car out of a parking spot. This isn't a flaw in the design, it's a fundamental trade-off. When you remove the clattering pistons and roaring combustion, you're left with forces that are subtle, precise, and often painstakingly slow to build momentum. The challenge isn't just about making silent propulsion stronger, it's about redefining what power even means. Traditional engines measure success in horsepower or thrust-to-weight ratios, benchmarks built for a world where noise and vibration were inevitable byproducts. But in a future where propulsion is silent, efficiency might matter more than brute force. Consider the way electric motors revolutionized cars. Early models were mocked for their lack of horsepower, until engineers realized torque and instant acceleration could deliver performance in entirely new ways. Silent propulsion faces a similar shift. A drone powered by ionic wind won't outmuscle a jet turbine, but if it can hover for days without disturbing a single leaf, does raw power still matter? That said, practical applications demand compromises. Take urban air mobility, a field buzzing with promises of silent air taxis. For these vehicles to work, they'll need enough thrust to lift passengers quickly, yet remain quiet enough to blend into city soundscapes. Right now, that balance is nearly impossible. Electrohydrodynamic systems can whisper, but they struggle to generate lift beyond small prototypes. Hybrid designs might bridge the gap, pairing silent thrust for cruising with brief bursts of traditional power for takeoff. It's like a cyclist using electric assist on hills, not purely silent but a smart compromise. The real game changer could lie in materials we've only begun to master. Superconductors, for example, could revolutionize electromagnetic propulsion by eliminating energy loss in coils, making silent thrust far more potent. Nanomaterials might let us pack millions of microscopic ion thrusters into a single wing, combining their faint pushes into something substantial. And then there's quantum tunneling, a phenomenon where particles teleport across barriers, which could one day lead to thrust systems that defy classical physics entirely. These aren't incremental upgrades, they're keys to unlocking silent propulsion's full potential. Yet even with breakthroughs, one hurdle remains universal: energy density. Silent systems often require immense power to achieve modest thrust, and today's batteries simply can't keep up. A passenger jet using ionic wind would need a power plant's worth of electricity crammed into a space no larger than a suitcase. That's why some researchers are looking beyond batteries to wireless energy beaming, compact fusion reactors, or even ambient energy harvesting. Imagine a drone that draws power from the Earth's magnetic field, or a satellite that fuels its ion thrusters with solar wind. The solutions sound like sci-fi, but so did silent flight a century ago. What's clear is this: the quest for silent propulsion isn't just about engineering, it's about reimagining the rules. Every whisper-quiet breakthrough forces us to ask new questions. How much noise are we willing to tolerate for speed? Can we redefine power to favor endurance over explosiveness? And most importantly, what happens when we stop fighting physics and start working with it? The answers might not come from building better engines, but from questioning why engines need to look like engines at all. After all, the most transformative technologies aren't those that improve the status quo, they're the ones that make it obsolete. Material science has always been the unsung hero of propulsion, but silent engines elevate its role from supporting actor to lead. Without the luxury of bulky pistons or spinning rotors to absorb stress, these systems rely on materials that can handle extreme conditions while remaining feather-light. Take graphene, a single layer of carbon atoms arranged in a honeycomb lattice that's revolutionizing electrohydrodynamic thrusters. Its conductivity is off the charts, allowing electrodes to ionize air with minimal energy loss, while its strength-to-weight ratio makes it ideal for aerospace applications where every gram counts. But graphene is just the opening act. Researchers are now experimenting with doped variants, embedding boron or nitrogen atoms into its structure to tweak its electronic properties like a tuner adjusting a radio. The result: electrodes that can operate at higher voltages without degrading, pushing ionic wind from a lab curiosity toward practical flight. Then there are metamaterials, engineered substances with properties not found in nature. Some can bend electromagnetic waves in ways that amplify thrust in ion engines, acting like invisible lenses to focus particle beams with pinpoint accuracy. Others manipulate acoustic waves, channeling sound energy into precise pressure zones for levitation or propulsion. Imagine a drone coated in panels that double as both structural support and propulsion units, their surfaces etched with microscopic patterns that turn incoming light or radio waves into directed thrust. These aren't just materials, they're functional architectures, blurring the line between engine and airframe. Durability is the next frontier. Silent propulsion systems often operate in punishing environments: the searing heat of space, the corrosive salt spray of ocean air, or the constant bombardment of high-energy particles in ion thrusters. Self-healing materials could be the answer. Polymers infused with microcapsules of healing agents automatically patch cracks when damaged, like a scab forming over a wound. Even more radical are materials inspired by biology ceramics that mimic abalone's shells, layering proteins and minerals to dissipate stress, or metals with bone-like structures that grow denser under load. A spacecraft hull built with these could repair micrometeorite punctures mid-flight, or an underwater thruster could seal corrosion before it spreads. The real challenge lies in scaling these breakthroughs. Lab-grown graphene might perform miracles in a controlled environment, but mass-producing it without defects is like trying to weave a kilometer-long tapestry without a single misplaced thread. Metamaterials face similar hurdles. Their intricate nanostructures often require fabrication techniques slower than traditional manufacturing. And while self-healing polymers work beautifully for small cracks, healing a meter-wide gash in a wing remains science fiction. But progress is accelerating. Roll-to-roll printing techniques are bringing graphene closer to industrial use, and AI-driven design tools are helping engineers optimize metamaterials for easier production. What's often overlooked is how these materials don't just enable silent propulsion, they redefine its limits. A conventional jet engine's performance is capped by melting points and metal fatigue, but a solid-state ion thruster with self-regulating materials could theoretically operate for centuries. The International Space Station's thrusters, for example, require regular refueling and maintenance, but a next-gen satellite with graphene electrodes and self-healing components might outlast its mission by decades. Even here on Earth, silent propulsion materials are leaking into other fields. The same metamaterials that focus ion beams are being adapted for noise-canceling headphones, while self-healing polymers could one day make car engines that repair their own wear. The question isn't just whether we'll develop materials tough enough for silent propulsion, it's how they'll reshape technology far beyond engines. When a single innovation can make spacecraft more durable, medical implants longer lasting, and everyday gadgets more resilient, the ripple effects could be as transformative as the propulsion revolution itself. And that's the quiet power of material science. It doesn't just solve problems, it rewrites the rules. Silent propulsion may ditch the roar of traditional engines, but it trades noise for an equally demanding challenge, an insatiable hunger for energy. Whether ionizing gases to create thrust or sustaining powerful electromagnetic fields, these systems demand power densities that would make even conventional engines blush. An ion thruster, for instance, might sip fuel frugally, but it gulps electricity like a supercomputer, requiring kilowatts of power just to generate thrust equivalent to the weight of a sheet of paper. This isn't a flaw in the design, it's a fundamental law of physics whispering back, silence comes at a price. Renewable energy seems like the obvious fix. Solar panels already power satellites and deep space probes, their silent harvest of sunlight perfectly matched to ion thrusters' steady hum. But scaling this to Earth-bound applications reveals the gap between theory and reality. A solar-powered drone using electrohydrodynamic propulsion would need panels so large and efficient they'd resemble flying gazebos, and even then, a passing cloud could send it tumbling. Wireless power transfer offers another tantalizing workaround, beaming energy via microwaves or lasers to vehicles in flight. Japan's space agency has tested this with small drones, proving the concept works, but extending it to passenger-scale aircraft would require infrastructure rivaling today's power grids. The heart of the problem lies in energy storage. Today's best batteries are like trying to fuel a cross-country truck with a thimble of gasoline. They simply can't hold enough energy for sustained silent propulsion at meaningful scales. Lithium-ion packs, while revolutionary for phones and cars, are still too heavy and slow to charge for applications where every gram counts. Solid-state batteries promise improvements, but even their theoretical limits might not bridge the gap. This has researchers eyeing more exotic solutions, superconducting loops that store energy in magnetic fields, or ultracapacitors that dump power in bursts for high-thrust maneuvers. Fusion power looms as the holy grail. Compact fusion reactors, if realized, could provide the energy density silent propulsion craves without the noise or emissions of fossil fuels. Companies like Helion and TA Technologies are racing to shrink fusion from stadium-sized experiments to devices that could fit on a ship or plane. The math is seductive. A gram of fusion fuel contains the energy of 10 tons of coal, but the engineering remains daunting. Even so, the vision is compelling. A cargo vessel crossing oceans propelled by silent fusion-driven ion thrusters, leaving no wake but a faint blue glow in its ionized path. Until then, hybrid systems are stepping in. Silent propulsion doesn't have to be all or nothing. Imagine a regional airliner that uses electromagnetic thrust for silent takeoff and landing near cities, then switches to efficient turbofans at cruising altitude. Or a submarine that creeps through sensitive marine habitats on near-silent acoustic propulsion, reserving traditional screws for open water sprints. These compromises aren't surrenders to practicality, they're smart adaptations to the energy realities we face. The deeper lesson here isn't just about overcoming technical hurdles, it's about rethinking efficiency itself. Silent propulsion forces us to ask not just how much thrust can we generate, but how elegantly can we generate it. A wind turbine's whooshing blades might seem efficient, but if we could capture that same energy with silent, solid-state panels that flex like leaves in the breeze, we'd redefine what power looks like. That's the quiet revolution underway, not just new ways to move, but new ways to think about the energy that makes motion possible. And in that shift, the future of propulsion isn't just silent, it's sustainable. The roar of a jet engine is one of the most unmistakable sounds of modern life, a thunderous reminder of how far we've come and how much we've sacrificed for speed. But what if the skies of the future weren't just quieter, but nearly silent? The aviation industry is at a tipping point, with noise complaints and emissions regulations pushing engineers toward propulsion methods that don't just reduce sound, but eliminate it at the source. Urban air taxis, once confined to sci-fi, are now prototyping with electrohydrodynamic thrusters that lift off without the deafening whir of rotors. These aren't incremental improvements, they're reinventions of flight itself, promising to untangle the knot of noise pollution that strangled cities for decades. Consider the transformative potential for urban hubs. Airports today are islands of noise, their flight paths dictating where people can live and work. But silent propulsion could flip that script. Picture vertiports on downtown rooftops, where air taxis arrive and depart without rattling windows or drowning out conversations. Emergency medical flights could land in hospital helipads at all hours without disturbing patients. The ripple effects go beyond convenience. Property values near flight corridors could stabilize, wildlife habitats near airports might recover, and the very definition of prime real estate could shift overnight. Military aviation stands to gain even more. Stealth technology has long focused on radar evasion, but silent propulsion offers something equally valuable: acoustic invisibility. Drones equipped with ion thrusters or hybrid acoustic systems could surveil hostile territories without giving away their position, their presence betrayed only by the shadow they cast. Special operations aircraft might infiltrate airspace undetected, not just by radar but by human ears. The tactical advantages are staggering, but so are the ethical questions. How do we regulate a technology that can make machines literally unheard until it's too late? Commercial aviation faces the steepest climb. Replacing the thunderous thrust of jet engines with silent alternatives isn't just an engineering challenge, it's a paradigm shift. Current prototypes focus on hybrid approaches like blended wing, designs where electromagnetic propulsion assists during takeoff and landing, the noisiest phases of flight. Airbus has experimented with distributed propulsion, embedding dozens of tiny electric thrusters across wings to diffuse noise into a barely perceptible whisper. The hurdles are immense, scaling power output, certifying unprecedented systems, and retraining pilots for aircraft that behave nothing like their predecessors. But the payoff, flights that don't shake neighborhoods, red-eye routes that don't disrupt sleep, and a future where airports no longer need noise buffers stretching miles. The quietest revolution, though, might be in regional travel. Small commuter planes, often relegated to secondary airports due to noise restrictions, could become community-friendly workhorses. Imagine 19-seaters powered by superconducting magnetic drives, gliding into rural airstrips at dawn without waking a single soul. These planes wouldn't just be quieter, they'd be cheaper to maintain, with no combustion engines to overhaul or complex gearboxes to service. Routes abandoned decades ago due to noise complaints could reopen, reconnecting towns to cities without the acoustic toll. Yet for all its promise, silent aviation isn't just about removing noise, it's about reimagining the social contract of flight. The roar of engines has always been the price of global connection, a necessary trade-off we've learned to tolerate. But as these technologies mature, we're forced to ask, what happens when that trade-off vanishes? Will silent skies make air travel so seamless we take it for granted? Or will they reveal just how much we've endured in the name of progress? One thing's certain, the age of screaming turbines is winding down, and the era of whisper thrust is waiting in the wings. Space offers the ultimate proving ground for silent propulsion, a realm where the absence of air removes the last barriers to frictionless motion. Unlike Earth's atmosphere, which swallows ionic thrust and dampens acoustic waves, the void of space amplifies even the faintest pushes. NASA's Dawn spacecraft, powered by ion engines, spent years gliding between the asteroids Vesta and Ceres on nothing but streams of charged xenon atoms. Its acceleration so gentle it would take 4 days to go from 0 to 60 miles per hour. Yet in the frictionless theater of space, that patience paid off. Dawn achieved velocities no chemical rocket could sustain over such distances, all while sipping fuel with the restraint of a desert cactus. But ion thrusters are just the opening act. Photonic propulsion, the art of sailing on light itself, could one day send probes to neighboring stars. Breakthrough Starshot's vision of laser pushed nanocraft hinges on this very principle, tiny sails catching billion-watt laser beams, accelerating to a fifth of light speed without a gram of onboard fuel. The math is staggering. A conventional rocket would need millions of tons of propellant to match what light can achieve with pure momentum. And because space lacks air to scatter or absorb photons, every pulse of laser energy delivers its full force to the sail, making the cosmos the only place where this technology could ever work at scale. Quantum propulsion takes the premise even further. Hypothetical concepts like the Casimir vacuum thruster attempt to harness the seething energy of empty space itself, where particles flicker in and out of existence. By manipulating these quantum fluctuations, engineers theorize spacecraft could push off the fabric of spacetime without expelling mass, a concept that borders on science fiction, yet aligns with known physics. While lab results remain contentious, the mere possibility underscores how space's unique environment unlocks propulsion paradigms impossible on Earth. The advantages extend beyond theory. Silent systems avoid the vibrational havoc that plagues traditional spacecraft, where shaking engines blur telescope images or misalign sensitive instruments. The James Webb Space Telescope, for instance, had to compensate for minuscule vibrations from its own thrusters during orbital adjustments, a problem ion or photonic systems could eliminate entirely. Future observatories might rely on quantum-stabilized positioning, holding station with atomic precision to capture the faintest whispers of the cosmos. Yet the greatest promise lies in endurance. Chemical rockets burn out in minutes. Ion thrusters can run for decades. Imagine a probe to Pluto that doesn't just fly by but stays, mapping the dwarf planet for years on a single tank of xenon. Or a swarm of photonic microprobes fanning out across the solar system, each costing less than a sports car to launch. These aren't just incremental improvements, they're keys to making space exploration sustainable. When propulsion stops being the limiting factor, missions become limited only by our imagination. The question isn't whether silent propulsion will dominate space travel, it's how soon. With private companies testing ion-powered lunar landers and governments funding quantum vacuum experiments, the shift is already underway. And as these technologies mature, they'll do more than quiet the skies, they'll open the stars. Because in the end, the universe doesn't care how loud your engine is. It only cares whether you can keep moving forward. The ocean is Earth's final frontier, a vast, silent world where even the faintest sound can travel for miles. For submarines and underwater drones, this presents a paradox. To move through water, they must push against it, creating noise and turbulence that betray their presence. Propellers, the workhorses of marine propulsion, are inherently loud, their blades churning water into telltale vortices that sonar systems can detect from staggering distances. But what if underwater vessels could glide as silently as a shark, their motion undetectable to both marine life and enemy sensors? That's the promise of silent propulsion beneath the waves, where electrokinetic and acoustic technologies are rewriting the rules of aquatic movement. Electrokinetic propulsion sounds like something from a futuristic thriller, but its principles are rooted in well-understood physics. By applying an electric field to seawater, engineers can ionize the water molecules around a vessel's hull, creating charged particles that generate thrust when exposed to magnetic fields. The result, motion without spinning blades, cavitation bubbles, or the low-frequency hum that gives away traditional submarines. Early prototypes, like the experimental underwater drones developed by naval research labs, have demonstrated whisper-quiet maneuvering, their only byproduct a faint trail of ionized water that dissipates in seconds. For military applications, this could redefine stealth. Imagine a submarine patrolling hostile waters, its presence masked not by soundproofing but by the absence of sound altogether. Acoustic propulsion takes a different approach, harnessing the power of sound waves to manipulate water itself. Instead of pushing against the ocean with physical blades, these systems use precisely timed ultrasonic pulses to create pressure differentials in the surrounding water. Picture a vessel surrounded by arrays of tiny emitters, each firing in perfect sequence to generate a wave that propels the craft forward like a surfer riding an invisible current. The technology isn't just theoretical. Researchers at the University of Bristol have already demonstrated small-scale acoustic thrusters capable of moving objects through water with no moving parts. For marine biologists, the implications are profound. Underwater drones equipped with acoustic propulsion could hover near coral reefs or fragile ecosystems without disturbing the delicate balance of life, capturing data in ways that were previously impossible. The challenges, however, are as deep as the ocean itself. Salt water is a harsh environment, corroding electrodes and degrading acoustic emitters over time. Energy efficiency is another hurdle. Electrokinetic systems require substantial power to ionize water, while acoustic methods demand precise control to maintain thrust without scattering sound waves in all directions. Yet the solutions emerging are as innovative as the problems. Self-cleaning electrode coatings, inspired by the way lotus leaves repel water, are extending the lifespan of electrokinetic thrusters. Meanwhile, AI-driven acoustic arrays are learning to adapt their pulse patterns in real time, optimizing thrust while minimizing energy waste. Beyond stealth and science, silent underwater propulsion could revolutionize industries like offshore energy and deep-sea mining. Remotely operated vehicles, RAV inspecting underwater pipelines or mineral deposits, often struggle with bulky, noisy thrusters that stir up sediment and obscure visibility. Silent systems could navigate these environments with surgical precision, their movements as unobtrusive as a jellyfish's drift. Even recreational diving stands to benefit. Imagine personal propulsion devices that glide you through a kelp forest without scaring away the fish, leaving nothing but bubbles in your wake. What makes this frontier so compelling isn't just the technology, it's the philosophy behind it. For centuries, humanity has conquered the seas by overpowering them with propellers and turbines that shout our presence. Silent propulsion invites us to listen instead, to move through the ocean not as intruders but as guests. And in that shift, we might discover not just new ways to explore the depths, but new ways to belong to them. Imagine a surgeon operating inside your arteries without making a single incision, no scalpels, no stitches, just a swarm of microscopic machines gliding silently through your bloodstream. This isn't the plot of a sci-fi movie. It's the cutting edge of medical technology, where silent propulsion is rewriting the rules of healing. Traditional surgical tools are limited by their size and the trauma they inflict, but microscopic engines with no moving parts could navigate the delicate maze of blood vessels with the precision of a compass needle. Guided by external magnetic fields or acoustic waves, these devices would be like submarines in your veins, delivering drugs directly to a tumor or clearing plaque from an artery wall without disturbing the surrounding tissue. The implications are staggering. Treatments so precise they target diseased cells while leaving healthy ones untouched, reducing side effects and recovery times to a fraction of what we know today. The secret lies in harnessing forces gentle enough for the human body yet powerful enough to propel microscopic machines. Magnetic propulsion is leading the charge, literally. By applying carefully controlled magnetic fields from outside the body, doctors could steer tiny devices coated in magnetic materials through blood vessels, adjusting their path in real time with pinpoint accuracy. Picture a clogged artery in the heart. Instead of inserting a stent with a catheter, a swarm of magnetically guided microrobots could break up the blockage particle by particle, flushing it away without ever risking damage to the vessel walls. Researchers at ETH Zurich have already demonstrated this with helical microrobots that drill through blood clots like miniature corkscrews, their motion driven entirely by rotating magnetic fields. The beauty of this approach is its reversibility. If a device veers off course, the magnetic field can be adjusted instantly, something no physical tool could ever achieve. Acoustic propulsion offers another tantalizing possibility. High-frequency sound waves can create pressure gradients in fluids, pushing tiny objects along predetermined paths with no physical contact. This isn't just theory. Labs have used ultrasonic arrays to guide drug-filled microbubbles through the bloodstream, popping them at exactly the right moment to release their payload. For cancer treatment, this could mean chemotherapy that zeroes in on tumors while sparing the rest of the body from toxic side effects. Unlike magnetic systems, acoustic propulsion doesn't require implants or special coatings. Any particle or droplet can be manipulated if its size and density match the sound wave's frequency. It's like playing a symphony for cells where each note directs a different part of the microscopic orchestra. The real game changer, though, is longevity. Today's implantable devices, like pacemakers, eventually wear out or need battery replacements, requiring invasive surgery. Silent propulsion could eliminate that entirely. Imagine a pacemaker no bigger than a grain of rice, powered by external magnetic fields that keep it floating perfectly in place within the heart, adjusting its position as needed without a single wire or incision. Or consider diabetic patients who could swallow a capsule filled with glucose monitoring microrobots, which then patrol their bloodstream silently, releasing insulin in real time based on acoustic signals from a wearable device. These aren't incremental improvements, they're leaps toward a future where chronic diseases are managed not with pills or injections, but with invisible, self-sustaining systems. Of course, challenges remain. Navigating the body's turbulent bloodstream is like piloting a drone through a hurricane. Even the slightest miscalculation could send a micro-robot off course. Engineers are tackling this by borrowing from nature, studying how bacteria like E. coli use tiny flagella to swim against currents. Some prototypes now mimic this with flexible tails that undulate in magnetic fields, combining propulsion and steering into one elegant mechanism. Another hurdle is power. Magnetic and acoustic fields weaken as they penetrate deeper into tissue, limiting how far these devices can travel. Solutions might come from hybrid systems, microrobots that harvest energy from the body's own chemistry, like glucose or oxygen, to supplement external guidance. What makes this revolution so profound isn't just the technology, it's the shift in philosophy it represents. Medicine has always been about intervening in the body, often forcefully. Silent propulsion invites us to collaborate with it instead, working within its natural systems without disruption. The day may come when the most advanced medical procedures leave no scars, no side effects, and no trace beyond the healing itself. And when that happens, the quietest machines in history could make the loudest impact on human health. Picture your kitchen without the usual soundtrack of clattering blenders or whirring coffee grinders. Silent propulsion isn't just for spacecraft and submarines, it's quietly creeping into the appliances we use every day, promising to turn our homes into oases of calm. Take the humble blender, a modern marvel that still relies on century-old mechanics spinning blades, chopping through ice with all the subtlety of a chainsaw. Now imagine that same blender pulverizing fruit into smoothie perfection with no blades at all, relying instead on ultrasonic waves to agitate molecules with surgical precision. The result, silky textures without the ear-splitting noise, and no more scratched pictures from metal blades. It's not just about quiet, it's about reimagining what appliances can be when freed from the constraints of moving parts. The same revolution is unfolding in climate control. Traditional HVAC systems groan and rattle as fans push air through ducts, their vibrations telegraphing through walls like a drumbeat. But what if your home's airflow came from panels embedded in ceilings or walls, humming softly as ionized air glides along electromagnetic tracks? These systems already exist in prototype form, using charged particles to silently shepherd air molecules where they're needed. Without fans, there's no dust collecting grills to clean, no motor bearings to lubricate, just walls that breathe as quietly as leaves rustling in a breeze. The implications stretch beyond comfort. Hospitals could circulate sterile air without turbulent fans kicking up contaminants, and recording studios might finally achieve true soundproofing. Even mundane gadgets are getting the silent treatment. Hair dryers, notorious for their jet engine roar, could soon harness ionic wind to evaporate water droplets without spinning turbines. Early adopters might recognize the technology from high-end, bladeless fans, where air multiplies silently through carefully sculpted loops. Now engineers are shrinking these principles further, testing handheld dryers that feel more like warm breezes than industrial equipment. The beauty lies in the side benefits: no more hair tangled in vents, no overheating motors, and energy savings from eliminating mechanical resistance. It's a reminder that sometimes the most radical innovations hide in plain sight, not as flashy breakthroughs, but as quiet liberations from daily annoyances. Product design is undergoing a seismic shift to accommodate these technologies. Without bulky motors or rotating assemblies, appliances can take sleeker, more organic forms. A ceiling fan might transform into a minimalist disc that seems to float magically, its ionic thrust invisible to the eye. Kitchen counters could house induction-based mixers with no protruding beaters, their bowls swirling ingredients via electromagnetic fields. Even vacuum cleaners, long cursed for their decibel levels, might evolve into silent pods that glide across floors, using acoustic waves to dislodge dust instead of suction. The aesthetic possibilities are boundless, blending function with artistry in ways that make today's gadgets seem clunky by comparison. Yet the real magic lies in reliability. Moving parts are the Achilles heel of consumer tech, the brushes in motors that wear out, the bearings in fans that seize up. Silent propulsion sidesteps these pitfalls by design. An ultrasonic dishwasher pump could outlast a conventional one by decades, with no impeller to corrode or seals to fail. Smartphones might ditch vibration motors for precise acoustic pulses that feel like taps on your skin, eliminating another point of mechanical failure. This isn't just incremental progress, it's a fundamental rewrite of the longevity equation, where devices age like fine wine rather than disposable plastic. What's often overlooked is how these quiet revolutions could reshape our relationship with technology. The constant background hum of appliances isn't just noise pollution, it's cognitive load, a subliminal stressor that modern life shrugs off as inevitable. Silent machines give us back something priceless: tranquility. Imagine homes where the only sounds are human voices and laughter, where devices serve without announcing their presence. That's the unspoken promise of partless propulsion, not just better gadgets, but a calmer, more intentional way of living. And in that hush, we might just rediscover the quiet joys we never realized we'd lost. Silent propulsion doesn't just change how machines move, it rewrites the rules of invisibility. In military and defense applications, stealth has always been a game of shadows and whispers. But what happens when the whispers disappear entirely? Take submarines, for instance. The most advanced models today still rely on propellers, their blades churning water into telltale vortices that sonar arrays can detect from miles away. Now imagine a sub that glides through the ocean like a phantom, propelled not by spinning screws but by ionized water molecules pushed along its hull by electromagnetic fields. No cavitation bubbles, no low-frequency hum, just silence so profound it could slip beneath an enemy fleet undetected. The U.S. Defense Department has already poured millions into prototypes testing this very idea, with early trials showing acoustic signatures reduced to levels indistinguishable from background ocean noise. Drones are another frontier where silence equals survival. Surveillance quadcopters hovering over hostile territory lose half their advantage the moment their rotors betray them. But swap those spinning blades for electrohydrodynamic thrusters, and you have a machine that loiters overhead without a sound, its only footprint the faintest distortion in the air. Special operations units are already experimenting with palm-sized scouts that use ionic wind to navigate tight urban canyons, relaying real-time intel without alerting even the most vigilant sentries. The implications stretch beyond reconnaissance. Imagine rescue drones delivering supplies to besieged troops under cover of absolute quiet, or swarms of disposable sensors seeding a battlefield without a single audible clue. Yet the most disruptive applications might lie in electronic warfare. Traditional jamming systems scream their presence with bursts of radio energy, but silent propulsion could enable a new class of stealthy countermeasures. Picture a drone that doesn't just evade radar but actively cancels sound waves around it, using phased acoustic arrays to create zones of perfect silence as it moves. Or consider autonomous underwater vehicles that mimic marine life, their propulsion systems adjusting dynamically to blend into the acoustic profile of whale songs or shrimp clicks. These aren't just tools for evasion, they're instruments of deception, turning the environment itself into camouflage. But this power doesn't come without peril. The same technologies that protect operatives could also cloak malicious actors. Drug cartels deploying silent submarines to slip past coast guards, or rogue states deploying undetectable drones over critical infrastructure. These aren't hypotheticals. When North Korea unveiled a submarine-launched drone in 2019, analysts noted its unnaturally low acoustic signature, hinting at propulsion methods beyond traditional propellers. The arms race for silence is already underway, and the line between defensive innovation and destabilizing threat grows thinner by the day. This forces a thorny ethical reckoning. How do you regulate a technology designed to be undetectable? Current arms control frameworks focus on physical weapons, not the means of their delivery. Should silent propulsion systems be classified alongside stealth aircraft and require export controls? Should there be international treaties limiting their use in certain waters or airspace, akin to nuclear test bans? The debate echoes Cold War dilemmas over radar-invisible bombers, but with a crucial difference. This time, the stealth isn't just about avoiding detection, but erasing the very concept of noise as a vulnerability. Perhaps the most unsettling question isn't technical but philosophical. In a world where machines move without sound, how do we define accountability? A torpedo that leaves no wake, a drone that hums no warning, these challenge the norms of warfare and policing. The Geneva Conventions mandate audible warnings before airstrikes, but what happens when the aircraft itself defies hearing? Silent propulsion doesn't just change how fights are won, it forces us to rethink the rules of engagement altogether. And in that silence, we might just hear the future of conflict whispering back. The hum of engines isn't just a soundtrack to modern life, it's a symptom of a deeper problem. Every roar from a jet turbine, every rumble from a cargo ship carries an invisible payload of carbon emissions and particulate matter, etching their mark on the planet. Traditional propulsion systems, for all their power, are shackled to fossil fuels, their efficiency capped by the laws of thermodynamics and the unavoidable byproducts of combustion. But silent propulsion offers a radical alternative, motion divorced from pollution, where the absence of noise mirrors the absence of emissions. Imagine a cargo fleet crossing the oceans not on bunker fuel but on ionic wind, their wakes cleaner than the water they displace. Or skies where airliners climb silently on electrohydrodynamic thrust, leaving contrails of nothing but disturbed air. This isn't just an engineering upgrade, it's an environmental reset button. The benefits extend far beyond cleaner air. Noise pollution, often overshadowed by its chemical counterpart, wreaks havoc on ecosystems we rarely consider. Underwater, the relentless drone of ship propellers disrupts marine life, masking the acoustic signals whales and dolphins rely on to navigate and communicate. Studies show some species alter their migration routes or abandon feeding grounds entirely to escape the auditory barrage. Silent marine propulsion, whether electrokinetic or acoustic, could restore the ocean's natural soundscape, giving back to creatures who have endured decades of industrial cacophony. On land, the implications are just as profound. Forests near highways or airports suffer from chronic noise stress, with birds altering their songs to be heard over engines, a desperate adaptation with cascading effects on mating and territory. Drones using magnetic or photophoretic thrust could monitor wildlife without triggering panic, their presence as unobtrusive as a passing cloud. Renewable energy is the silent partner in this revolution. Solar-powered ion thrusters or wind-harvesting acoustic arrays could create closed-loop systems where propulsion fuels itself. Picture a future where desert roads are lined not with gas stations but with photovoltaic canopies, charging silent trucks that glide on electromagnetic highways. Or coastal wind farms doubling as hydrogen production hubs, fueling ships whose only emission is ionized seawater. The synergy between clean energy and silent propulsion isn't just convenient, it's transformative, turning transportation from a climate liability into a regenerative force. Yet the most overlooked advantage might be psychological. Humans evolved in a world where loud noises signaled danger, a primal wiring that makes engine clamor more than an annoyance, it's a stressor. Cities adopting silent mass transit could see drops in cortisol levels, better sleep patterns, even improved cognitive function in schools near formerly noisy corridors. The value isn't just in what we remove, but what we regain. The sound of rain unobscured by traffic, the ability to hear a child's laugh from across a park, the simple peace of an unbroken horizon. The question isn't whether silent propulsion can help heal the planet. It's how much we're willing to reimagine to let it. Policy shifts, infrastructure investment, even cultural acceptance of quieter technologies all play a role. But the blueprint is clear, a future where moving through the world doesn't mean leaving scars upon it. And in that silence, we might just rediscover the harmony we've been drowning out for centuries. Building the future of silent propulsion doesn't come cheap. Cutting-edge materials like graphene and superconducting coils carry price tags that would make even well-funded startups wince. A single ion thruster for a satellite can cost hundreds of thousands, while experimental electrohydrodynamic systems demand custom power electronics that aren't yet mass-produced. But peel back the sticker shock and a different story emerges. These systems aren't just replacing engines, they're reinventing the economics of motion. Traditional propulsion burns money as relentlessly as it burns fuel. Jet engines guzzle maintenance hours, with turbine blades requiring costly replacements after thousands of cycles. Cargo ships spend millions annually scrubbing soot from exhaust stacks and replacing worn propeller bearings. Silent propulsion flips this model on its head. With no moving parts to grind against each other, an ion-driven freighter could theoretically sail for decades without ever needing a dry dock, its only maintenance being occasional electrode cleaning. The math gets even more compelling at scale. A study by the International Transport Forum estimated that switching global shipping to hybrid electrokinetic systems could slash operational costs by nearly 40% within 15 years, savings that would ripple through every product on store shelves. Yet the real game changer lies in energy efficiency. Silent propulsion doesn't just reduce friction, it sidesteps it entirely. Take thermoacoustic cooling. While conventional refrigerators waste energy fighting mechanical resistance in their compressors, silent alternatives convert temperature differences directly into motion, potentially cutting household electricity bills in half. For industries where energy dominates expenses, think aluminum smelting or data centers. This isn't just incremental progress, it's a competitive edge. The aviation sector offers the starkest contrast. A modern jetliner spends roughly 30% of its operating budget on fuel, a figure that could plummet with electrohydrodynamic assisted takeoff systems reducing drag. Airlines wouldn't just save money, they'd gain flexibility, opening routes currently deemed uneconomical due to noise restrictions near urban hubs. The adoption curve, however, mirrors every transformative technology. Early investors bear the brunt of development costs, while latecomers reap the rewards of matured systems. Consider the solar panel industry. Pioneers in the 1990s paid premium prices for 20% efficiency, while today's buyers get twice the performance at a tenth the cost. Silent propulsion faces a similar trajectory. Companies like DHL and Maersk are already running pilot programs with ion-assisted cargo drones and ships, betting that being first to master the learning curve will lock in market dominance. Their calculus, the initial premium, buys not just hardware, but priceless operational knowledge, how to optimize routes for energy harvesting, when to schedule maintenance on systems with no wear indicators, even how to retrain crews accustomed to listening for engine trouble. Governments are tipping the scales with incentives that recognize silent propulsion's collateral benefits. Norway's Enova program offers subsidies covering up to 60% of the cost difference between traditional and zero-emission ferries, factoring in noise reduction as a public health metric. Japan's Green Innovation Fund prioritizes grants for projects that combine decarbonization with acoustic pollution mitigation. These policies acknowledge what spreadsheets can't, that the true value of silent technology isn't just in dollars saved, but in communities transformed. A port that never echoes with ship horns, a neighborhood no longer bifurcated by airport noise corridors. These are dividends that compound across generations. The wild card in this economic equation, disruption potential. Just as smartphones didn't just replace landlines but spawned entirely new industries, silent propulsion could unlock business models we can't yet envision. Imagine micro-freight networks using whisper-quiet drones for just-in-time deliveries overnight, eliminating warehouse sprawl, or construction firms operating 24/7 in dense urban areas, their equipment humming at library-level volumes. The first movers in these spaces won't just adopt a technology, they'll define the rules of entirely new markets. What's clear is this: the economics of silent propulsion aren't a simple cost comparison, they're a paradigm shift. Like renewable energy or electric vehicles, the upfront investment tells only part of the story. The real payoff lies in the quiet transformation of entire industries, where efficiency gains and new capabilities rewrite the definition of what's possible. And for those willing to bet early, the returns might not just be financial, they could be existential. The companies that crack this code won't just save money, they'll shape the future of how the world moves. Trusting something you can't see or hear goes against every instinct we've honed over millennia. From the rumble of a car engine to the whir of a blender, sound has always been our subconscious proof that machinery is working until now. Silent propulsion asks us to believe in forces we can't perceive, and that cognitive leap might be its biggest hurdle. Picture a passenger boarding a plane with no audible engines, or a homeowner hesitating to buy a blender that doesn't roar. The absence of noise feels like the absence of power, even when the opposite is true. This isn't just about physics, it's about psychology. Demystifying these technologies starts with tangible metaphors. Just as Wi-Fi transformed from a baffling concept to an everyday essential, silent propulsion needs relatable comparisons. Take the humble microwave. It cooks food with invisible waves, a process that once seemed like magic but now feels mundane. Engineers might frame ion thrusters as invisible paddles pushing through space, or electrohydrodynamic systems as magnetic tides lifting drones. The key is grounding the abstract in the familiar without erasing the wonder. When NASA first introduced ion propulsion in the 1990s, public skepticism melted away after the Deep Space One mission showcased its gentle but relentless acceleration through live telemetry. Seeing the data, the steady uptick in velocity, the thruster's flawless endurance made the intangible tangible. Transparency builds trust in ways specs alone can't. Imagine maintenance crews live streaming inspections of silent propulsion systems, showing electrodes free of wear or acoustic arrays pristine after years of use. Or consider flight recorders in electric aircraft broadcasting real-time diagnostics to passenger screens, proving stability even without engine noise. The aviation industry faced similar skepticism when fly-by-wire replaced mechanical controls, but cockpit displays showing system health eased fears. Silent tech could adopt this playbook, turning opacity into a feature rather than a flaw. But education alone isn't enough. Experience is the ultimate persuader. Test rides in whisper-quiet urban air taxis or hands-on demos with acoustic levitation displays could rewire public intuition. Toyota's early hybrid cars faced doubts until dealerships let drivers feel the instant torque of electric motors, bypassing logic to speak directly to the gut. Silent propulsion needs its own test drive moment, whether it's letting commuters touch the vibration-free hull of an ion-driven ferry or hosting school groups to pilot drones using nothing but magnetic fields. Sensation trumps explanation every time. The cultural shift might come from unexpected allies. Artists and musicians are already experimenting with silent propulsion as a medium, sculptures that float on sound waves, concerts where instruments hover midair. When technology intersects with creativity, it ceases to be intimidating and starts inspiring. Even social media trends could play a role. Viral challenges showing coins balanced on engine-less appliances or asthma videos highlighting the soothing frequencies of acoustic thrusters might make silence feel less eerie and more enchanting. Yet the deepest trust will be earned through reliability, not rhetoric. Just as elevators gained acceptance only after safety brakes proved fail-proof, silent systems must demonstrate resilience. Public transit networks adopting magnetic levitation could highlight decades of flawless operation in cities like Shanghai, while medical microrobots might earn confidence through phased trials, starting with non-critical applications like targeted drug delivery before progressing to surgeries. Every silent train that arrives on time, every drone that delivers without disturbance, chips away at skepticism. The irony, once these technologies become mundane, their silence will become their signature. We don't marvel at the absence of crank handles on cars today. We take for granted innovations that once seemed radical. The hum of an engine may soon evoke the same nostalgia as steam whistles or manual typewriters, a relic of a louder, clunkier past. And in that quiet future, we'll wonder how we ever tolerated the noise. Room temperature superconductors could be the master key that unlocks silent propulsion's full potential. Imagine wires that carry electricity with zero resistance, eliminating the energy losses that currently shackle electromagnetic thrusters. These mythical materials, once confined to labs under extreme cold, are inching toward reality, with recent breakthroughs hinting at alloys that achieve superconductivity at everyday conditions. The implications are staggering. Magnetic levitation systems so efficient they could float entire trains without power-hungry cooling systems, or ion thrusters that accelerate particles at unprecedented speeds without melting their own electrodes. Private labs from Tokyo to Boston are racing to stabilize these fleeting superconducting states, knowing the winner could rewrite the rules of motion itself. Quantum physics, long confined to theoretical discussions, is now leaking into propulsion labs with startling practicality. Take quantum entanglement, the eerie link between particles that Einstein called spooky action at a distance. Engineers are exploring whether entangled ions could synchronize thrust across an array of microscopic engines, creating propulsion systems that self-adjust with perfect coordination. Picture a spacecraft with thousands of nanopropulsion units, each instantly mirroring the other's adjustments without lag or communication delay. The European Space Agency's Quantum Technologies for Space initiative is already funding experiments to test these principles, betting on quantum mechanics to solve problems classical physics can't touch. The real acceleration, though, comes from unprecedented collaboration. NASA NIAC program funds wild ideas like photonic railway propulsion, while startups like AeroVironment partner with universities to miniaturize ionic thrusters for consumer drones. This isn't just teamwork, it's a global brain trust pooling insights from materials science, astrophysics, and even biology. One MIT team drew inspiration from electric eels to design flexible underwater thrusters, while a German consortium is mimicking hummingbird wings for silent aerial mobility. The boundaries between disciplines are blurring, and the cross-pollination is birthing hybrids no single field could conceive alone, but which technology will lead the charge? Ion propulsion has a head start with satellites already relying on its steady push, yet electrohydrodynamics is gaining ground for atmospheric applications. The dark horse might be acoustic levitation, once dismissed as a lab curiosity. It's now showing promise for handling fragile materials in zero-gravity factories. The answer likely isn't one winner, but a mosaic of solutions tailored to specific environments. Space might belong to photonic sails, oceans to electrokinetic systems, and cities to magnetic levitation. The wild card lies in emergent phenomena we haven't even classified yet. Just as X-rays and radioactivity were accidental discoveries, tomorrow's propulsion breakthroughs might emerge from experiments with entirely different goals. A lab tweaking quantum dots for solar cells could stumble upon a new thrust mechanism, or a medical researcher studying cellular ion channels might unlock a bio-inspired propulsion secret. That's the thrill of this frontier. The next leap could come from anywhere, rewriting our playbook in ways we can't yet fathom. The only certainty, the future of motion won't just be silent. It'll be astonishing. Silent propulsion isn't just a technological leap, it's an ethical tightrope. The same innovations that promise whisper-quiet hospitals and cleaner skies could also erase the auditory cues we rely on for safety and accountability. Consider the paradox of a submarine so silent it breaches marine sanctuaries undetected, or drones that infiltrate airspace without triggering acoustic sensors. These aren't hypothetical risks, they're dilemmas already emerging in defense contracts and regulatory meetings. When a technology's greatest strength, its silence, becomes a tool for evasion or harm, who gets to decide where the line is drawn? History offers cautionary tales. The invention of radar-absorbent stealth materials revolutionized aviation, but also sparked arms races as nations scrambled to counter invisible threats. Silent propulsion could follow a similar path, with governments and rogue actors alike exploiting its advantages for surveillance or covert operations. The ethical challenge isn't just preventing misuse, it's anticipating unintended consequences. A fishing fleet using electrokinetic thrusters might avoid disturbing marine life, but the same systems could also enable illegal trawlers to pillage protected waters without sonar detection. The technology itself is neutral, its impact depends on the hands that wield it. Transparency could be the antidote. Open-source development of non-military applications, like acoustic rescue drones or ion-powered ambulances, might democratize access while setting norms for responsible use. Imagine international noise floors akin to carbon emissions caps, where industries agree to baseline audible signatures for certain vehicles, ensuring some level of detectability. Researchers at The Hague are already proposing acoustic watermarking, embedding imperceptible identifiers in propulsion systems so authorities can trace rogue drones or submarines without compromising stealth for legitimate users. It's a delicate balance, preserving innovation's promise while installing guardrails against abuse. The stakes escalate when silence intersects with autonomy. A fully autonomous cargo ship gliding noiselessly through fog raises questions no maritime law is equipped to answer. If it collides with a fishing boat, how does accountability function without engine logs or audible warnings? Legal frameworks lag behind technology, often reacting to disasters rather than preventing them. The aviation industry's response to drone near misses, mandating transponders on all craft, shows how regulation scrambles to catch up. Silent propulsion demands proactive governance, with ethicists and engineers collaborating long before products hit the market. Yet the most profound ethical question isn't technical, it's philosophical. In a world where machines move without sound, what happens to our collective sense of presence? The hum of engines has always anchored us to the rhythms of industry and travel. Silent cities might gain peace but lose a layer of communal awareness, a sonic tapestry that signals shared activity. There's a reason elevator music emerged when silent lifts unsettled passengers. Humans crave auditory confirmation of function. As we design quieter machines, we must also design new ways to foster trust and connection in their silence. The path forward isn't prohibition, it's wisdom. Just as nuclear technology partitioned into energy and weapons, silent propulsion will bifurcate into benevolent and dangerous applications. The difference lies in our willingness to confront these dualities head-on. International coalitions like the Silent Propulsion Ethics Consortium, launched last year by the EU and Japan, offer templates for cross-border cooperation. Their early focus, distinguishing between privacy-enhancing quiet, think library quiet delivery drones, and secrecy-enabling silence, think undetectable surveillance. This isn't just about avoiding dystopia. It's about steering toward a future where silence serves rather than obscures. The same electromagnetic thrusters that could militarize stealth might also power the first noiseless neonatal incubators, their gentle fields cradling preemies without vibrational stress. The choice isn't between progress and precaution. It's about weaving ethics into innovation's blueprint. After all, the quietest revolutions aren't those without opposition. They're the ones that listen to every voice before they move forward. Silent propulsion is too vast and complex for any one lab or nation to conquer alone. It demands the kind of global teamwork usually reserved for moon landings or particle accelerators. Across continents, researchers are stitching together a patchwork of expertise, each region contributing unique strengths to the puzzle. Japan and Germany, for instance, are pushing the boundaries of electromagnetic propulsion, their precision engineering cultures perfectly suited to crafting the microscopic tolerances needed for efficient ion thrusters. Meanwhile, the United States leverages its Silicon Valley ethos, with startups like Ionic Aerospace partnering with NASA to miniaturize electrohydrodynamic systems for urban air mobility. But the real surprise leader, Australia, with vast solar resources and a booming critical minerals sector, it's becoming a testbed for solar-powered silent drones that could monitor the outback or deliver medical supplies across remote indigenous communities. These collaborations aren't just about sharing data, they're about blending philosophies. Take the European Union's Clean Sky Initiative, where French acoustics experts work alongside Italian material scientists to design aircraft wings that cancel noise at the molecular level. Or the Norway-India submarine project, merging Scandinavian stealth technology with Indian software prowess to create AI-driven acoustic propulsion that adapts to ocean conditions in real time. The lesson here is cultural. Breakthroughs happen when meticulous German engineering rubs shoulders with India's improvisational, jugaad mindset, or when America's risk-taking startups cross-pollinate with Japan's methodical corporate giants. History offers a blueprint. The International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor ITER proved that even rival nations could collaborate on fusion energy, sharing costs and insights across 35 countries. Silent propulsion is following suit. The Global Silent Transport Alliance, launched last year, already pools patents and testing facilities from 17 nations with a shared rule. Any member can license another's breakthroughs royalty-free for non-military use. This open innovation model accelerates progress while sidestepping the patent gridlock that often stifles disruptive tech. Yet challenges loom. Export controls on dual-use technologies, like ultra-quiet submarine thrusters that could militarize, threaten to fragment research. China's aggressive investments in quantum propulsion are viewed with suspicion by Western allies, despite their potential to revolutionize cargo shipping. And then there's the brain drain problem, when a Swiss lab perfects superconducting materials, only to see its researchers lured away by Dubai's zero-tax aerospace hub. Balancing competition and collaboration is the tightrope walk of this era. The most promising alliances might be unexpected. Small island nations, for instance, are banding together to fund silent marine propulsion, desperate to protect their fisheries from noisy ship traffic. Their joint venture with Dutch engineers has yielded electrokinetic ferries that glide between Pacific atolls without disturbing reef ecosystems. Similarly, African nations are leapfrogging legacy infrastructure entirely, testing silent delivery drones that bypass crumbling roads, a collaboration between Kenyan mobile money platforms and South African aerospace firms. What emerges from this global mosaic isn't just better engines, it's a new model for innovation itself. When a breakthrough in South Korea's graphene labs can accelerate a Canadian ion thruster startup, or when Brazilian bioacoustics research helps tune silent wind turbines in Scotland, the old nationalistic rivalries fade. Silent propulsion reminds us that the future isn't a zero-sum game. Sometimes the quietest technologies make the loudest case for unity, and in that shared silence, we might just find our common rhythm. Silent propulsion isn't just about building better machines. It's about reimagining humanity's relationship with motion itself. For centuries, progress has been measured in decibels. The louder the engine, the more powerful we assumed it to be. But now, as these whisper-quiet technologies emerge from labs into our daily lives, they're quietly dismantling that assumption. Picture a world where highways no longer vibrate with the growl of diesel trucks, where morning commutes unfold to the sound of birds rather than engine brakes, where astronauts glide between planets on beams of light instead of explosive chemical reactions. This isn't merely an upgrade to transportation, it's a fundamental redesign of how we interact with our environment, both on Earth and beyond. The implications ripple far beyond convenience. Consider urban planning. Cities currently organize themselves around noise buffers, pushing airports and industrial zones to the periphery. Silent propulsion could dissolve these boundaries, allowing vertiports in downtown plazas and factories nestled in residential areas without disturbing a single conversation. Or take wildlife conservation, where the sudden silence of electrokinetic ships might finally let marine mammals communicate across oceans again, reversing decades of acoustic habitat fragmentation. Even art stands to transform. Imagine symphonies performed in open-air venues uninterrupted by aircraft noise, or filmmakers capturing dialogue without the constant struggle to overpower background engine hum. What makes this revolution unique is its democratizing potential. Traditional propulsion systems concentrate power in the hands of those who control fuel supplies and manufacturing chains. But silent technologies often rely on universally available forces, magnetic fields, sound waves, light pressure, that any nation or community could harness with basic infrastructure. A village in the Andes might power ion thrusters with solar panels, while a Tokyo startup could manipulate quantum fluctuations in a basement lab. This decentralization could spark innovation from unexpected places, much like how mobile technology leapfrogged landlines in developing regions. Yet the most profound change might be psychological. We've been conditioned to associate mechanical noise with productivity, the clatter of construction equipment, the whine of dental drills, the roar of rocket launches. Silent propulsion challenges that deep-seated bias, proving that efficiency doesn't need to announce itself. Early adopters report something unexpected. The absence of engine noise creates space for focus and creativity. Pilots testing silent electric aircraft describe heightened situational awareness, while patients undergoing sound-guided medical procedures report less anxiety without the buzz of traditional surgical tools. It's as if removing auditory clutter lets our brains process the world more clearly. The road ahead isn't without obstacles. Regulatory frameworks lag behind the technology, struggling to classify vehicles that defy traditional noise profiles. Insurance models must adapt to systems with failure modes unlike anything in the mechanical world. And perhaps most challenging is the cultural shift required, retraining mechanics to diagnose electromagnetic fields instead of worn bearings, teaching air traffic controllers to track aircraft without relying on acoustic signatures, even helping ordinary people trust machines that give no audible confirmation they're working. But every transformative technology faced similar growing pains. The automobile was once dismissed as a noisy, unreliable novelty compared to horses. The internet seemed an obscure academic tool before reshaping global communication. Silent propulsion stands at a similar inflection point, poised to transition from curious experiment to civilization-altering norm. As this quiet revolution gathers momentum, it invites us all to participate. Whether you're an engineer refining ion thrusters, a policymaker drafting noise regulations, or simply someone who dreams of quieter cities, your voice matters in shaping what comes next. The age of roaring engines is winding down, making way for something more elegant, more sustainable, and ironically more resonant with our deepest needs. After all, in the silence between the sounds, that's where we often hear ourselves most clearly.